Okay, so I'm all caught up now. So this is a recap of the passage, episode 4. Whose blood is that? Okay, so this episode is all about, mostly about Anthony Carter, who is the prisoner. Okay, so he's having a dream. And in this dream, you see this woman face down in this pool, and Fanning appears, and he's basically telling him that he's going to have to make a choice. Okay, so he wakes up, and then you flash to some morning, and Brad and Amy are talking, and she was saying how she think that Carter, because they're right next door to each other, so how she thinks he's having nightmares. And Brad asked if she was concerned, and she was like, "Well, I'm not having nightmares, but I am concerned. I'm worried about what they injected into me, what's gonna happen to me." She's going on and on. And he was like, "Wait a minute, what was one of the rules that we had?" And she was like, "Don't panic." He's like, "What are you doing right now?" She said, "Panicking." And he just basically tried to reassure her that she was going to be fine, and everything was going to be okay. But he did decide that he wanted to talk to Dr. Lear. I keep saying Dr. Jonas was his first name, but his last name is Lear, so Dr. Lear. So he knocks on the door when one of the guards come in and asks what he wants. And he basically he wants to talk to Dr. Lear. Okay, so around this time, Dr. Lear is looking, because he's still investigating this possibility that they're communicating with each other. And so he's looking at the brain activity of one of the patients, and one of the doctors was like, basically the same doctor who was basically like, they have the intellect, the cognitive ability of a sponge. They are not communicating with each other. But then he was looking at the monitor and like, what is going on? There's a lot of activity going here, brain activity. And so he was asking who he was looking at, and he was like, "Oh, it's Fanning." So they're like, okay, they're kind of befuddled, like, what is going on here? What's up with this? So Brad is now talking to Sykes and Jonas and saying that Amy is a 10-year-old girl. She needs to be outside in the fresh air. Like, she's been locked up in this facility, and so they relented and they allowed her to go outside and for them to build a tree house and the whole thing. So now they're So Clark is getting off the elevator, and he sees Babcock, and she's telling him, basically she put a bug in his ear that one of his men are not as loyal as he thinks that they are, and that they're going to turn on him. And of course he's like, "Oh, that sounds crazy, that's crazy, whatever, that's, I trust him with my life, it's not a big deal." She's like, "Oh, okay, well, don't say I didn't warn you." And so around this time he gets a call about one of his officers pulsing. And so he goes up to check on Paulson. And Paulson is actually in the room. He was monitoring one of the patients, David Winston. And Clark walks in, and he's like, because you see that Paulson is in like this trance, like, because he's communicating with him. And Clark basically asked if he was okay, and Paulson was like, they're going to take over, and he's basically sound like he's hysterical, and he's not in his right mind at this point. So Clarkson tells him that, you need to go and see the medic, to counsel to make sure that you're all good. And so as far as he was concerned, he sent him to go talk to the doctor to make sure that they don't have what eventually ends up happening. Stay tuned. Okay, so Amy and Anthony, they're in their rooms, and they're passing notes back and forth under the door. And I can't really, I'm too far, I guess I'm just too far from, I can't read what the notes are saying, but they're going back and forth, and they seem to be having a good time communicating with each other, because it seems like they're on, most of the time it's just them. So Brad and Amy are now outside, and she's like drawing what she wants the treehouse to look like, and they get to a certain point. Let me see. They get to a certain point where they have the deck and the stairs, but they haven't actually built the actual cover. And so he calls her and asks her to come up, and then that's when you see that she's afraid of heights. And so he talks her through, and she gets up there. She finally makes it up there, and she was basically like, "So now what do we do?" So, he was asking her, what did she see? And she was like, "The same thing I see basically from the damn window of my room." And he was like, no, look over in that direction. So he was like, we're able to we have a higher sight of the property, and we can kind of see what's over this wall and that. She was like, oh, that was smart. And he basically like, he's like, I have my moments, don't sound so shocked about it. So Anthony and Jonas, and so they're talking, and he's telling him again about the dreams and Fanning and Rachel Wilson, and he told him he was going to eventually have to make a choice. And Jonas was like, what kind of choice? What is he talking about? So they can finish up their conversation, and Sykes and Clark start talking. They meet up and they start talking, and she said, so what happened with, she was asking about Babcock, like, what happened, what made you change your mind? People are asking him, there's a lot of whispers, and he basically said that he got a call from DOD telling him that he couldn't go forward with the execution. So she was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. They kind of, made plans to meet up later on, and, that was that. Paulson, and while they were talking, Paulson had walked past, and then you find out after, they had a little scene where they finished up their conversation, that he went back to Winston's cell, and he's now standing there again while this guy's in his head talking to him, communicating with him. So Anthony, he's having another flashback, and so you find out when he meets Rachel. And he flips home. So he has a house that he's trying to sell, and she comes up and they start talking, and he was like, no, he's pretty good about this. And she was like, no, you're trying to get, he doesn't want to deal with the realtor because he doesn't want to have to deal with the commission and that whole thing. And so she kind of walks around the house and was telling him some things that he could approve on, and kind of flirting and the whole thing. And eventually he ends up asking her out, and then Fanning appears, and I forget at this point what that conversation was, but he wakes up and he sees that Amy had put a note under the door, so he goes to get the note, and he's looking at the note, and next thing you know, he sneezes and blood is just coming out of his nose. And so you can now see that he's now in some type of distress, where all this time he had been fine. Well, I mean, aside from the dreams, physically he had been okay. Brett and Amy. So Brett and Amy are talking about Anthony, and she's still concerned that something might happen, that the same thing's going to happen to her. And so they finished the tree house, and they're now sitting up, sitting on the deck, and she asked, the officer came to pick up the tools. And she asked to borrow if she could see, I don't know why I forget to do this, if she could see her binoculars. And she, reluctant to let the little girl have the binoculars. And so Brad was kind of telling her which direction to look to tell him what she sees. And then she peers, she's scanning around. And then she said, I see a guy on the roof. And he said, okay, yeah. And he said, he has a huge gun. And so he ends up pulling her down to the ground. And that's when all the chicanery ensues now. So we have Leah. So she's sitting down with the reporter, and she basically, like, I was able to confirm a lot of the stuff, and there's going to be this news story that's going to run the next day. And so they're all excited that, the story is about to get out. So Dr. Sykes, she ends up calling DOD just to get some clarification on why they stopped the execution of Babcock. And then she gets the confirmation that, well, they didn't. Obviously we knew that, but she did. So now she's like, oh, okay. So now she's looking like, what? Like, why did he lie to me? What, this issue with Babcock is more than Clark, I guess, has been letting on. And so, Jonas is still monitoring Fanning's brain activity. And so the next thing you know, it's like it's off the charts. And so then you flash to Anthony. Anthony is now in some sort of distress. He's all curled up in the corner. He's sweating. He's shaking. It's the whole thing. So they actually have to come in to remove him and take him down so they can perform some medical working, because they said his temperature is sky high, and so they're trying to get him all cooled down. It's just the whole thing. And so while this is going, they get Anthony downstairs, and they hear on the radio, they like, okay, what the hell is that? And so they hear the gunshots. So Paulson is now shooting. He's just shooting at, you know, the vehicles. He shoots just to get their attention at this point. He wasn't actually aiming at anyone at this point. And so Clark, so they get the team together and they go out to try to get him under control. And he's basically saying that he wants a helicopter out of the property. He wants to get out. And of course, these people are crazy. They ain't gonna, okay, whatever. And so he's basically like, I have a clear sight to the power, the wherever, you know, the generators. And so if you don't, you know, give me a plane to get me out of here, that's gonna go next. And so, but this time, Amy and Brad are now ducked behind a tree. They could see Clarkson, but they don't have the cover at this point to run. And so basically he's explaining to Amy what's going to happen. You know, we're going to have to run. We have to go. Do you see that? You know, see where Clarkson and all that's where we need to go. And so of course she's afraid because she's trying to get shot. But he's like, just stay behind me. And so they do the countdown. And so they make a run for it. And so the Clark and his team, they're shooting to cover them. Amy takes the fuck off. He was like, oh my God, Amy went. So of course, because remember that they gave her that shot. And so it enhances your abilities. And so she breathes right on past him. And so they finally make it and they start talking. And Brad agreed to go up and talk to him because he used to be a negotiator. So while this is going on, they're still frantically trying to get Anthony stabilized. His temperature's still off the charts, and his blood pressure it's just a lot going on. So they're pouring they have him in his tub, and they're pouring buckets of ice on him, and then eventually it was after Paulson eventually he took out the generator, so the power went down. So they didn't have they had to take the ice to try to keep him cool down, but it still wasn't working. It was like, what the hell is going on? And of course Jonas made the connection between him and Fanning, and like Fanning is doing this to him somehow. And of course Sykes at the time was like, that's crazy, what are you talking about? But it's just a whole thing. So throughout the episode, Anthony's having these flashbacks of him and Rachel. So he has another flashback of him and Rachel, and they've only been together for like 3 months. And she goes to his house, and he was like, "Yeah, why are we here?" And she was like, and for their 3-month anniversary, this bitch was crazy. For their 3-month anniversary, she's like, I thought that we could fix this house up and flip it. It had the pool and the whole thing. And he looked at her like, what do you mean? I don't understand. And she was like, he basically was like, this is more, I'm just a one-man team, and this is going to cost more, and it's going to take more time than I have to invest in this and this whole thing. And she was like, why are you always so negative? Why? And like, she flashed on him, and he's standing there like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, we've only been there 3 months. And so she, that was his sign to keep fucking pushing, but no. She basically's like, well, that's too bad because I've already put a bid on the house and it goes to escrow tomorrow. And basically she's already bought the damn house. Because I thought, that you would be on board, and then they sit down, and he eventually relents and agrees to invest in whatever time, the money, whatever, to fix this damn house up, okay? And then again, Fanning appears, still saying, telling him he's going to have to make a choice. And so, he can't, he's still just out of it because the temperature is damn sky high. He can't, he's basically on the verge of having a damn heart attack. And so, they take, Brad goes up to talk to Paulson. So he comes out, and Brad's basically explaining to him that, they're not going to get, these people, they're not going to let you go. And he was like, well, I already know that. That's why I took precautions. He's like, well, what do you mean? He said that he had taken a vial of Fanning's blood. He was able to smuggle it out of the facility. So basically, if they don't let him out, it's going to get into that blood is going to get out into the general population, and it can affect God knows how many people. And so now they're like, oh, okay, shit, okay. So you have Lila and Lacey. So now they're sitting down waiting for, because this was the day that news story, this expose on this whole thing was supposed to air. But what aired was in remembrance of this journalist who conveniently who died in a car accident. So now they've killed the journalist who's going to report on the story. So Lacey was like, Lila was like, oh my God, they killed her. Lacey was like, we got to go. And so for a minute, Lila was sitting there, and Lacey was like, we need to go. So they start packing the shit up to get out of Dodge. So Anthony again is having a flashback. So Rachel comes home, and she has this black eye. And he's looking at her like, what the hell happened? What is going on? And that's when this bitch tells him that she's married. And so now he's freaking out like, what the fuck are you talking about? You got into this relationship with this woman, and he's all claiming he's in love with her. They done bought this damn house, and this bitch, she's crazy. She was crazy. The minute that day she flashed on you, you should have packed your shit and you should have walked the fuck on and let her deal with whatever came with buying that house. Because bitch, nobody tell you to do that. But no. She's trying to make it out that, her husband is this crazy guy, this abusive guy. And she explained to him, and he didn't want to hear that shit. And he's like, I'm not trying to get in the middle of this. You lied to me. You don't understand that you were, he's like, I kind of got past your crazy. So he acknowledged that she was crazy, but he stayed anyway. So Amy is back in her room, and I guess she's waiting for Anthony to wait for him to respond or something. May have slid a note under the door, and then she turns around and Babcock is there. So they start talking, and of course she's trying to get Amy to like buy into whatever they were doing. Basically the same thing that Fanning is doing to Anthony. She's trying to do to Amy, but obviously she's not as great. She's not causing Amy any distress or anything like that. But Amy was basically like, I don't want to. No, first she said, I want to see how you really look. She asked her where she was, and she said, I'm locked up in the basement. She was like, I want to see how you really look. And so she changed, with her face all fucked up and fangs and stuff came out, and then she changed back. And so Amy was like, I ain't interested. I don't want to hear nothing you're talking about. Leave me alone. So Babcock left. You can see Babcock felt like, oh shit, he wasn't able to get her. But so Babcock left, and Amy is now sitting there trying to figure out, okay, the hell. Brad and Paulson, so they're talking, and he basically, because he has an earpiece, so Clark can hear everything that's being said. And so Brad is telling him that, he agrees with him. He's been down to 4B. Because I thought that Clarkson knew at this point, but he didn't know. So when he said that, you can see his facial expression change. Like, when the hell did he go? When the hell did he make it down there? And how he didn't like how those people were being treated. And he's like connecting with Paulson. And Paulson starts telling him about Fanning and the plans, and how Fanning, they're going to eventually take over, and it's not and Fanning is like, they're not going to escape, we're going to eventually let them out. And of course Brad's like, what are you talking about? Of course we're not going to do that. But he was like Fanning is planning, he needs one more person to, I guess, I don't know, because it seems like the more people that they bring into this facility and inject with his blood, because all of this is stemming from his blood, that the more power he has, and he's able to control them. And so he was saying how he need one more person, and all he has to do is ask Clark, because the Clark and the whole thing with Babcock, and they'll start talking this. Brad busts through the door and he ends up shooting Paulson in the head. So of course, let's say Clark busts through the door and ends up shooting Paulson in the head. And so Brad is now sitting there pissed, like, why would you do that? You were just trying to shut him up. And what is he? And then Clark said, "When were you down at 4B?" He was like, "I was just saying that to build a rapport with him." And so next, security comes and they take Brad back to the room. And so again, the whole time they're going back and forth with them trying to get Anthony stable. And so the power comes back up, and Anthony's having another flashback, and they're sitting by this pool, the pool, and the husband called. He answers the phone. Again, any point in time he could have walked away from this whole goddamn situation. And he said something. You never hear the husband's voice, but he basically Anthony says, she don't want to talk to you, or don't call here. Something he says to the guy and hangs up. And now they are lying in bed, and it's they're not talking to each other. So next morning he wakes up, the sliding glass doors open, and Rachel is face down floating in the pool. So that was the flashback he had in the dream he had in the beginning. That was Rachel floating in the pool, dead as fuck. So now he goes out and he pulls her out of the pool and he's trying to revive her, and of course Fanny appears and he's basically telling, and you find out how Anthony got in trouble and how he ended up on death row. He said basically the husband framed him, and he was able to convince the police officers that that Anthony was one that was abusing her, and how he and Anthony was the one that killed him. And when you look at the dynamics, and Rachel is white, so I'm just assuming her husband is white, and Anthony is a dark-skinned black man. So, you know, the justice system being what it is, he ends up being the one going to prison and actually on death row for her murder. And so basically the whole time is flashing back and forth between him, his flashback, and them working frantically to try to revive him and to keep him conscious and the whole thing. And then next thing you know, it's like you have to make a choice. So it flashes him diving in the water, and eventually he makes a choice and he chooses Fan. And so he jumps out of the pool and he's off, his fangs all out, and you know, of course, now everybody's running like, oh my god. And so he ends up grabbing one of the doctors. He ends up killing one of the doctors, but not before hitting Dr. Jonas. And so they end up grabbing Jonas and pulling him into a secured room. And Sykes is like, what is going on in your face? And so because his mask was off and he had blood on his face. And so Sykes looked at him and like, okay, well, whose blood is that? And so now Jonas is now standing like, oh shit, what the fuck? What's gonna happen to me? So that's how this episode ended. It looks like we're about to get into the good on this week, this upcoming week, where we're gonna see what little Amy can do with her abilities. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.